Right, let's get stuck back in. Hope you enjoyed the interlude. Gone from the playful music to the dramatic. Do get hurricanes, get the leftovers of hurricanes? Yeah, that's kind of similar to here. Like, so saying before, we had a cyclone hit a few months ago. We tend not to get the direct cyclones. We tend to get it when it's devolved into a tropical storm. So it used to be a cyclone. Cyclone being the Pacific version of what is essentially a hurricane once you get to the high categories. We'll usually just get a low category, or it'll be a tropical storm, or by the time it gets to us it might just be a tropical depression, which is not just something you get when you're on holiday and realise you have to go back to work next week. That was a little close to home. Massive 2-day rainstorm, yeah. I mean, that's basically what happened here. Is it was kind of a cyclone, kind of just a storm, but it was just all a heavy rain. Like the worst part of a hurricane, like the categories of hurricane are based on the wind intensity. And you don't want it to be too super windy, that's for damn sure, but a lot of the problem is just the intense and persistent rainfall, or the deluge that happens in a short space of time and prevents drainage from working adequately. So that's when you get flash floods and drains flooded, and yeah, bad news. Cyclone is just a hurricane, but spinning clockwise makes no difference. It's just what do you want to call it? I mean, you're generally correct simply because things do spin the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. You get the old colloquial idea of like toilets flushing the other way. That's not true. It doesn't happen on a small scale like that. That's purely down to how it goes into the bowl. But at large scale, in terms of things like a cyclonic storm system, things spin the other direction in the southern hemisphere. And then in the northern hemisphere, around Japan, they get called typhoons in the Pacific instead of hurricane. Again, same thing. Big spinny storm of death. That's all they are. They're just all the same. Same thing, different name. Different roots of name. I forget where typhoon comes from. I believe it's from Japanese. Cyclone obviously is just spinning, you know, cyclonic. That's just the Latin or Greek, I forget which, for just spiral or whatever, I think. I can't remember where hurricane comes from. I think it might be Spanish, perhaps? Hurricane or something? Not sure. But they all describe the same weather phenomenon. It's just different names for different classification areas. Why is the eye of the hurricane so chill? Because it's where everything... Well, it's... The bit around the eye of the hurricane is not. But at the middle point, there is always a dead zone. Because the wind can't go any other direction in the middle. It's basically the updraft. But at surface level, you just don't really get anything. Chill sunshine? Probably won't be sunshine. It'll still be really cloudy. Generally still won't get sunshine, unless it's midday and it's peering through the middle. A lot of the time it'll still be clouds around. But the point is that the winds are calm at that point. But the downside is that on the very cusp of the eye of the system, the winds are at their strongest because they're whipping around the shortest distance. Hurricanes share any similar properties with tornadoes, other than that they spin, no. It's not like a tornado turns into a hurricane, or that a hurricane concentrates into a tornado. No, I mean the same sort of properties are true, in that it's usually the air pressure that creates the effect. But tornadoes are a very different beast entirely. The only property that they share is that they spin, and it's to do with wind pressure. Tornadoes are scary. They're a much more localized effect, basically, as I understand it. So you get them where you've got an immediate conflict between like a high pressure and low pressure zone, I think. It's like macro versus micro weather systems, whereas hurricane is over a much larger area. So you have a large pressure front that conflicts, as opposed to it being at a much more immediate level. Hurricane can have... Yeah, so hurricanes will have the clouds, yeah. But the hurricane itself is not a tornado, it will not spawn a tornado. It's just that it has the same conditions, it represents the same weather conditions that you may result in tornadoes, but you also may not. And it depends on what happens at the local level. Anytime you've got pressure differential, you get extreme weather. It just depends on how that manifests. That can be based on what's going on in the atmosphere, it can be based on the geography and how that affects everything. Certain places will be more prone to those sorts of conditions resulting in things than others. You get a tornado alley or whatever, where, yeah, clearly the conditions are just right for that sort of thing to happen. When we've had big storms over here, we will occasionally have tornadoes touch ground and cause some havoc. But, as I say, we'll often not actually have the hurricane or cyclone itself. It'll have already worn out by that stage, so it's the same sort of conditions that lead to the localized effect. Because then you can have tornadoes that just spin up out of pretty much nothing and then just wreak havoc and then dissipate all very quickly. Tornadoes aren't that scary to me. Yeah, I mean, say that to me when one's gone past your house or something. I think that's pretty damn scary. Microbursts. I mean, like, heavy rain or something? You get that sort of thing regardless. I'd be more worried about the massive raging column of wind that can tear through your house. That's fairly scary. I don't think that's irrational in any form. I think that's a pretty well-founded thing to be afraid of. Fairly sure where we live is not particularly susceptible to that sort of thing, thankfully. No, you never can tell going forward. Oh, larger ones forming little... Yeah, you get little clusters. Invisible and the reason most tornado chasers die. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go out of your way... Sorry, Ruby, but if you're going to go out of your way to chase storm systems, you are a bit of an idiot. And if something in relation to that kills you, it is 100% your fault. Especially if you are chasing it in such a way that you know what's happening, you understand the science, and yet you still go after it to try and do whatever. I don't even know what you're doing. Just trying to get cool photos, or maybe study it, but I thought they're pretty well studied by now. Use a drone? I don't know. It's kind of like that bloody Titanic thing recently, you know? Just use a drone. Trying to put yourself in a dangerous situation doesn't make any sense to me. Wouldn't know how they happen? Yeah, we would. Yeah, we would. We know how things happen from studying their effects. You don't have to be going after one, necessarily. So you can use stationary cameras. You can use drones. We have a huge array of other mechanisms. You know, 100 years ago, absolutely, the only way that you could learn something is by observing it. Actually, not even 100, more like 200. You had stationary cameras 100 years ago. They weren't very good, but we had them. These days we have satellites that can see what's going on at really good quality. You can have a live streaming high resolution camera saving into a pretty indestructible hard drive that you could even bury. You could have it wirelessly transmitting to a storage medium that is properly protected. So if the camera gets toast, it won't matter. There's a lot of things you can do. It's one of those things where, yeah, you see storm chasers or similar sort of dangerous situations. It's like, okay, I have sympathy for your families and empathy that, okay, horrible way to go, but if you put yourself in a dangerous situation and perish, yeah, kind of your fault. I'll stick to staying at home where it's nice and comfy. Drones and cameras, a guy in massive balls and also a massive brain. Built a machine where it tracks a lot of information about tornadoes, but it needs to go through it, so you wait for it to be right in front, path, place down machine and run. Yeah. I mean, well done, say, back before other things were possible. It's not that, yeah, I mean, you could have just left the thing in the right area and hoped that it went over it. It's a case of how much risk do you take to shortcut getting reliable results, because otherwise you've just got to hope that it goes where you project it's going to. Otherwise, yeah, you've got to put it in the path of, or have multiple. That's the other option, but shit, usually it gets expensive. That's where you want to have a nice bunker or something handy. It's one of those things that, yeah, you might need to take on that risk if you feel that, okay, to get the right results at the right time and not rely on luck of it going in the right place, then I'm going to have to put my life on the line to do this. Okay, now if you lose your life, who else is picking up your work? Like, if you are that exceptional and have this great understanding, you've now lost that expertise. The world no longer has that knowledge and that experience. So that's idiotic, I'm afraid. Like, that's not helping. That's the opposite of helpful. You're then relying on other people to pick up your pieces. Figuratively and literally. So a lot of the time it's actually a very selfish thing of, I want to be the one to discover such and such. My name will go down in history, and even if I die, then people will remember that I did this. It's like, yeah, whatever. So yeah, if you die in the pursuit of something like that, and other people are then going to have to piece it all together. Now, hopefully you have a good community of other people who are like-minded, but you might put back efforts by multiple years because of that. And it's, that was a stupid thing to do. You didn't advance the science at all, or you certainly didn't help do it as quickly as it could have done. I predicted Mount St. Helens. Happened to be doing some experiments around it when it went off. A good chunk of people didn't believe him. Yeah, there was all sorts around. Yeah, people who drove up onto it to watch what was happening, even though they'd been warned that it was a really bad place to be. People are stupid. I took off his center, Mr. Super overjoyed it happened despite the fact he knew he was going to die. Yeah, he's an idiot. Like, if he was there and didn't make an effort to get away, then that's just stupid. Of course no one's going to believe you if you're not leading the charge and evacuating. Yeah, I remember looking up quite a lot. I can't remember most of it now, but I remember looking up a lot about Mount St. Helens while I was a kid, because I think it happened the year I was born or something. So I was often fascinated by things like that. Definitely a case of, yeah, people who won't heed warnings. You see the same thing here a lot. There'll be warnings of, like, potential tidal wave effects. Like, we don't get massive tsunamis, thankfully, or we haven't yet. But there'll be massive earthquakes in the Pacific or something, and there'll be a warning about high tide surges and how people should stay away from the coast. And what do you get? You get dozens of people going to the coast. Some people taking their surfboards to go down, because they want to enjoy seeing it and riding the wave and taking videos of it. It's like, you idiots. You're lucky it's not anything major. Something then were to come along and, oh, it's actually bigger than we thought. And you're toast. Yeah. People are funny. Brick by brick, we are slowly working at this. I have a really itchy nose for some reason. I apologise for me scratching it all the time on camera, but it's... Yeah, you ever get just like a little itch and you have no idea why, and it just lingers? What? Ah, yeah. Exceeded the message limit slightly there. Gonna break up your sentence. Oh, I have that limit set really high, so you did well writing an essay there. Tell people to evacuate. I can read the message because it's just crossed out for me. I'm doing some experiments while up there. Didn't know it's going to happen exactly there. Right, gotcha. Caught his overdrug reaction to a tape recorder and protected with his body, right. He did help people. Did he though? Did he help people? I guess you're an English major. Oh well, fair enough. Got to work on your sentence composition and breaking things into smaller paragraphs. But it's one of those things that, yeah, you could say, oh, you help people because you encourage people to evacuate. Yeah, but if you're then still going up into a dangerous place to try and collect more readings and stuff, instead of just maybe placing things and then getting out of dodge, people will see that and go, oh, you're an expert in this field and you're still going up there, so it must be safe, so I'm not going to evacuate. So it's entirely possible he actually put more lives at danger. That's the thing you got to consider, is what are your unintended effects? What are the other consequences from people's perceptions? And yeah, maybe those people wouldn't have paid attention anyway, but if you're giving people a reason to ignore warnings by still persisting in going up and going into a dangerous situation yourself, then you're just giving people license to go, well, look at that person. They know better and they're still going up there. You know. So he may be the reason some people evacuated, but was he also the reason that some people didn't? I mean, a partial success is still a success, but most people tend to call it. People are very quick to call people heroes at the best of times, so that doesn't surprise me. People aren't going to call someone out as being a villain, and it's not like he was a villain. It's like, yeah, you're still a hero, but even heroes make mistakes. A hero is not some absolute out for, oh, but he was a hero. Yeah, but did he still make mistakes? Was that still the correct thing to do? To continue to go up? No, the heroic thing to do would probably have been to actually sacrifice the opportunity of doing additional research in order to set a good example and make sure that more people were staying away. And, yeah, lead from example. That would probably be the more heroic thing to do, is to realize where to draw the line. But, yeah. It's all in the past. I think a lot of the time people in that situation get caught up in the idea of, oh, but we've got to gather this information, it's the only chance we'll get. It's like, it probably isn't. Like, you'll probably get other chances. In the span of human history, give it another 5-10 years and it'll probably be a similar sort of thing. Maybe we'll understand more just from studying what happens. You don't actually have to be there when it goes off. You know. Again, it gets kind of caught up into that idea of, oh, but it's my research and I've got to get such and such. It's like, or someone else could in 5 years' time. You know. Or you'll have the opportunity. If you live, you'll have the opportunity to try again another day. You know. Just think a little bit more about things. But, you know, scientists are really good at getting preoccupied and not thinking of themselves or of their own safety. That's kind of one of the hallmarks of the distracted scientist, is, yeah, doing stuff that most people would think is a bit silly in the furtherance of their research. Imagine living in Pompeii. Yeah, I'll pass. Yeah, back before I mean, they understood a fair bit about volcanoes. Like, we don't give ancient civilizations enough credit sometimes, and mainly because a lot of records were lost, but yeah, they knew some amount of what was up, but obviously not to the same extent. Certainly wouldn't have had, like, early warnings enough, and also nowhere to evacuate to anyway. Like, let's be real about that. It's like, if you lived in somewhere like Pompeii, even if you knew that, oh, the ground's shaking, oh, the mountain might erupt, you would pray to your gods or whatever. You can't go anywhere else. It's your livelihood, that's all you know, and you can't travel very fast or very far. What are you going to do? You know, you can't just uplift and leave as easily. Personal mobility is a lot more these days. Go to Iceland. Oh yeah, Iceland is the mecca for volcanic activity for sure. Also just around the Pacific Rim in general. Indonesia often has some rumblings. Alaska has a ton of volcanoes as well, I believe. I don't know how perpetually active they are. It's not as ongoing a continental event as Iceland is, but There's still a decent up there. It's like the Valley of 1,000 Smokes or something. I forget the exact colloquial name, but... I mean, we have a decent amount of volcanology down in New Zealand. We've got a few volcanoes in the North Island, White Island blew its top a few years ago. That was another example of people putting themselves in dangerous situations. There's like tourist activity going to White Island. You could walk on an active volcano. Why would you do that? But hey, there was tourists who wanted to do that, and then it erupted without warning. Without as much warning. I mean, the tourist operators were told not to go there. They still did, so they were liable for those people's deaths. But there is a certain amount of personal responsibility of, are you sure you want to go to an active volcano? And yes, the tour operator may still be operating, but you should also review what the warnings are. It's like, I actually don't feel comfortable about going here. Oh, this person who's taking my money says that it's fine. Yes, but what does the government organisation responsible say? Thing about Pompeii, is it being preserved? Yeah, that's right. Because it is an anaerobic environment, like there's no oxygen, to make things rot, things just get preserved in the mud. Or not even mud, but the rock, basically. So, I mean, a lot of it was lahar, I think. It wasn't just lava, it was also volcanic mud, I think. But yes, things can't rot because that requires oxygen. Oxidation is what generally means things don't get preserved. That includes rot, it includes rust. So yeah, very useful of people to build their civilization on the hill of a volcano so we can study what it looked like thousands of years later. Now that's a rock. So I'm sure that's what they had in mind. I hate these little bits where I'm just scratching away random pieces of these barnacles off some of these stones. So, is there stones, like there's that one that I just had the tiny bit to miss, so some of this stuff might be more, other bits might just be surface texture that isn't actually something I need to clean. It's hard to tell sometimes. I kind of prefer when it's just one big caked on block. So it's very obvious, okay, this is what I need to clean. Some of the stuff is just a little bit fiddly. Also been going for like another half an hour or so, and we've barely scratched out 1 extra %. This episode we're going to finish this wall one way or another. I'm not leaving this bit half done. We started with it being kind of half rinsed after finishing the back wall. We're slowly chipping our way. We are down to the point we can see the gold down below us. We're 3 bricks deep. This is a very big wall and it's got a lot of mess on it. Now, I haven't even been like consistent in how I've been cleaning these blocks either. I've been really rather absent-minded. So we've still got 3 blocks height here, and then even more down the other end that we've kind of got distracted away from. So yeah, this is gonna be a lot. We'll see if we manage to finish this in the next hour, let alone... Well, it certainly won't be half an hour, that's for damn sure. This will be a longer episode, I think. Oh well. Just scratch away what we can. Would the Pompeii people that were buried be considered fossils? I would assume so. I would call them fossil. We've literally been fossilized, surely. I don't know what the technical definition is, maybe not, but I would have thought so. Seen a picture of the Pompeii person was hit by a rock. No, I don't think I have. The hype by being hit by a rock. 2,000 years people on the internet laugh at your misfortune. I mean, you're famous. You know. Seems good. I think you'd have a hard enough time explaining what the internet is to someone from 2,000 years ago that the least they're going to care about is people laughing at them for their unfortunate demise. I like to think they'd laugh about it too. You know. Ancient people had a sense of humour as well. I think they'd probably have found it quite hilarious that they went out by being smacked by a rock. As part of it. And at least they probably died much quicker than other people in that whole scenario, so, you know. Seems good. Other than a slow asphyxiation from volcanic fumes, you know. Probably go back to the top layer over here. Oh god, there's more than I thought. The perspective made it seem like it wasn't all that much down this end, but it is massive. Okay. Maybe this will take more than this. Maybe we will do another break before I finish this wall. I spoke without realizing the enormity of the situation. To remind new viewers, the yellow does nothing against these barnacles, so I am forced to use the red. Yeah, the main thing out of Pompeii is like seeing the thing of, this is how people spend their final moments, and generally it's not surprising. It's exactly what you'd expect. Hey, boy. Got like 9 layers of this. It's a little bit of alternating of up, down versus left, right. Is 4.5 hours even going to be enough to finish this? Maybe I should have gotten up earlier today. I took the opportunity to sleep in and started streaming later than I could have. I could have started a couple hours earlier if I'd gotten up at the usual time I get up on a weekend, or any day for that matter. But yeah, we thought we'd stay in bed a bit longer and stream at the time I normally would. That might have been a miscalculation. Might have wanted to get an early start to have a bit more time in the kitty. So I did want to have a bit of time to do some other stuff at home too. Well, there's always tomorrow morning. There is a reason there was a question mark in the finishing touches on the stream title. It's a case of maybe, but we're not going to guarantee anything, because there's a lot. Started strong. That back wall was actually much better than I expected. Mainly because the entranceways don't have as much they don't have any of the barnacles around them. So when we're doing the entrance ray of the front, that's going to help. Like the home stretch is not going to be as bad. This is the long, slow climb on the way to the nice, comparatively easy downhill stretch that we will have when we get round to the front. Okay, that's another row done. Now we can work our way backwards again. I think I'm being demanding enough on this. Doesn't look like I'm leaving traces behind, at least. Brick by brick. He's a brick house. Classic. Keep forgetting doing this with a base gun? Yep. Are you a masochist or is this a speedrun thing? I mean, it can be both. It's definitely not a speedrun thing. It's a challenge run, yeah. If it was a speedrun, I'd be using the Pro. No, it's a challenge run. I don't know exactly why. I thought it was a good idea at the time, and then now I'm committed, so, you know. It's to show it can be done. And I doubt anyone else has done this. If they have, great. Good for them. I'd be interested to know their motivations. But I vaguely remember... what gave me the idea originally is back when the game was still in early access and they released like the Pro Washer and it was really expensive. I seem to remember a lot of people complaining about how expensive it was and how they just spent a lot of money on other washers and other upgrades and how, but now it's so hard to be able to finish everything without this, and I've got to grind to get the better washer before I move on. And the contention was simply that, well, you don't need the Pro Washer. You can do everything with just the basic washer. It was especially something that when they added in the multiplayer, if you join into someone's session and you don't have anything other than the starting gear, like if you join into someone doing this map in multiplayer and you just have this, you know, they made sure that the red nozzle and the turbo nozzle will clean everything, distance permitting. So you've got to be close, you've got to move fairly slowly over some things, but it will be possible so that everyone can contribute if they're joining in on a session. So I had the thought of, okay, well, I'm going to prove that, yep, you can do the entire campaign using just the starting gear. You don't need to take any upgrades. Complaining about how much it costs is superficial. Especially given when you see that I've got 23 grand, which is way more than you need to buy everything anyway. But it's just showing the fact that, because there is a bit of a conception that, oh, but you can't do this without such and such. Oh, I need the Pro Wash to do that. I need the high washer at least to do some of this. So you don't. It makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot quicker. But it is possible to just use this. Half the video game challenges you do make you think you're masochist. Yeah. I mean, I did a pacifist run of Mankind Divided and Human Revolution. Admittedly, there are achievements for that. There's no achievement for what I'm doing in this game, but I have been the sort to chase after those real niche 1% completion sort of achievements. Basically, before I started doing speedrunning, I was doing challenge runs of games before I even knew that it was technically a thing. I'm selective about what I do. It's got to be engaging. And that's the other thing, is like, if I was just using the Pro Washer on this, and I will have a comparison at some point, I do intend to, after finishing this, come back through on free play and do everything using the Pro, and just blast the levels away. And it becomes a case of, is that then too easy? But it'll be an interesting contrast, because if I was able to just clean this entire wall using just the yellow nozzle, that's kind of boring, isn't it? That'll be the interesting thing with the Pro Washer. When I start doing the free play of that, it's a case of, do I ever need to use the red nozzle? Or the turbo? Can I get away with using even just the green? Like, I will probably start each level by just using the green nozzle and seeing if that's sufficient. Because it does become a case of, yes, with this I'm having to just use the red, so it's a bit one-dimensional, but that's because I'm having to pay attention to what I'm doing. It's much more engaging. If I was just lazily wafting the yellow over everything and I didn't need to do a second pass, I just didn't need to think at all about what I was doing, that's kind of less engaging. So, yeah. Pretty sure it's taking around a whole semester to get to this point. Pretty sure you could probably beat this in a weekend if I try hard enough. I certainly couldn't, if you're meaning using the Pro Washer, then possibly. I definitely couldn't using the basic washer, because this level alone takes an entire weekend. Part of the problem is it's taken me a long time to chip away at this, because there was periods of time when I wasn't streaming much at all, or because I can only stream limited times, I was dedicating to doing Truck Simulator content instead, or preparing for speedrun marathons, things like that. Like last weekend I did a blackout bingo session for Razor 1 because he requested it with channel points, so that took up a streaming session, where otherwise I could have done another couple of hours on this. So yeah, I have very limited streaming time available, generally. Like, I get pretty much just the weekend mornings, and it usually involves constant interruptions. So it's a case of it took me a long time just to get to this point. It'll be interesting to look at the accumulated time with the playlist that I've got. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't give you a nice metric. Like, it tells you for a playlist, oh, it's this many videos. It doesn't tell you it's this long, or at least not in the view that I've been looking at it anyway. Be interesting to see what length of time it's actually taken overall. And then when I do the Pro Washer revisit, basically the salty run back with the Pro Washer, it will be interesting to see what the difference is. Certain levels will still take about as long. That's the interesting thing, because there are some levels where I've been able to use the yellow nozzle for most of it. I think the skate park is a good example of one, where it just comes down to the amount of time you have to spend to cover the surface area. You know, no matter what wash you're using. You can get away with maybe a slightly wider angle if I'm able to use the green nozzle with the Pro instead of the yellow. But at the end of the day, you've just got a certain amount of surface area to cover. It's not ingrained or anything, it's just that's as long as it takes. I think the playground was another one like that. It's like very little of it was ingrained stains like mold or anything. It's just pure surface area. So those ones probably won't take much difference at all. It will be interesting. But at the end of the day, I am somehow enjoying what I'm doing. I don't fully understand it either. But we've got some music on. We're scrubbing away some barnacles. It probably helps that, like, I made sure to reset my progress before I finished the campaign, because after they fully launched the game out of early access, they did not reset any progress, which I can understand to an extent. They would have pissed off a lot of people if they had forcibly reset progress. I made sure to get all of the achievements on levels I'd already done. I went back and redid them in free play mode to get their achievements. And I did the ancient monument, the hand in the desert. I did that using the Pro Washer and the white nozzle, because that's an achievement, and I knew that that was going to be a pain. And I knew it wasn't going to be possible with the basic washer. So I did that, and then I reset progress. If I had already finished this, if I'd already completed the career, I knew I would not likely have the drive to come back and finish this off and do this challenge in its entirety. I would probably have given up somewhere, probably at Subway, to be honest. So if I've already done it, I'm going to be less inclined to want to do it again under these conditions. But it kind of helps that I have not done it yet. So I am doing this level for the first time under these conditions. So I have no basis for comparison. I have the enjoyment of doing something for the first time, in addition to, or contrasting against, the challenge of doing it on hard mode, basically. Playing this, I tend to skip the second washer and go straight for washer 3. That is exactly what I did in early access. I skipped the urban and went for the high power, because, yep, as you say, the washer 2 is not that big an upgrade. It's not so much a waste of money per se, because you'll be able to afford the high pressure anyway. The Pro you pretty much never need, but it's a nice to have. Now, the one big difference is the urban washer, being the second one, does start to become useful. I think it's the haunted house level. If you can afford it, it's not necessarily a waste of money. You probably shouldn't get all of the attachments, but getting the washer itself, it has an amount in the ingrained category. And that's what mold is, I believe. So it does make a lot of... You can use the yellow nozzle on mold instead of having to resort to doing the red nozzle like this. So while I did the same thing, and I also just saved for the high pressure instead of the urban, was it the 3000, I think? This is the 1500, I went for the it's the 3000, I think. So I did the same thing. I did definitely notice the point at which having the urban would have been useful. Yeah, it wasn't bad enough that made me want to get it. Speaking of which, soap is 100% useless? Correct. I miss seeing that comment, but yes, correct. Makes the game less fun? I disagree with that, because I could see why people would want to use it. I have used it before, when I was first doing the early access side of things. Soap is situationally beneficial, but the fact that it's such a scattergun spray, if you could hook soap up to your normal nozzle, it would be useful. The problem is that you can just do a spray and pray, and that's not useful. I feel that it should be an inline attachment that goes with any other nozzle, so you could use it with the yellow, for example. So it would make it possible to clean rust, for example. You'd be able to clean rust using a wider nozzle than you would otherwise be able to. Then it would be more useful. Soap in its present state is not useful. Well, It's useful-ish, but it's certainly not essential. I've been doing this without using soap, you know, this entire thing, obviously. Well, I say obviously, like, you can get a soap nozzle for the basic washer. I have it, I just have not bought any soap. This is a no soap run in addition to being a basic washer run. But that's kind of the thing, is that you're either using a washer like this that is less powerful than what it should be, and in which case soap could be beneficial, or you're using a more powerful washer, which means you don't need soap. So I mean, so in that respect it is useless. Yeah. Runs out too quickly. That's the other thing, is it is very quickly burned through, and the fact that it is such a limited consumable, which I think, yeah, you only get a certain amount that you can buy now or something, I think, as well, isn't it? Something stupid like that. It used to be you could buy as much as you wanted and it just cost a certain amount, but then I think people were complaining that they just kept wasting their money on soap and then couldn't afford upgrades, so they wanted to avoid that happening. So they kept the amount of soap that was in supply, but by doing that, they make it such a limited commodity that it's not worth using. So it's like catch-22, really. And yeah, it's a case of you either need it because you're doing something like this. Like, you could use soap to spend a small amount of money to make it easier to clean moldy surfaces while you don't have the X2 because you're saving for the third washer. You know, you can invest a smaller amount of money to make it slightly easier to tide you over until you get the better washer. I could feasibly see you do that, but yeah, it's not really that beneficial. At the end of the day, if I can do the entire campaign using the basic washer and no soap, you don't need soap. It's as simple as that. If they had implemented soap in a different way, early access, you had mechanic, every job you finish got 2 extra of each soap type? Yes, correct. That's, yeah. I did experiment with it, but quickly determined that, yeah, the way that it's implemented is not great. What soap should be, because it's like, oh, I'm using this really light spray, but it's somehow cleaning everything? Even though I would normally need to use the red washer or something. To me, what soap should do is you should cover a surface with soap, and then it loosens up the grime that it itself should not clean. It will just loosen up the dirt that's underneath and make it easier to clean. So like an ingrained stain becomes not ingrained, basically. It changes the type of stain that it is. So if you sprayed soap over these barnacles, it would loosen them, and then you should be able to rinse it off using just the green nozzle, for example. That is how soap should work. The fact that it itself does the cleaning does not make sense, and hurts its utility in the game. Describing how soap works in real life, I know, funny that, you know. If you're gonna call it soap, make it work like soap. Then it would be much more technical, and there'd be some thought that you have to put into actually using it, and it would make a lot more sense. It also shouldn't just be like a spray sort of thing. It should be like the white nozzle, basically, so it's a nice wide angle, but you can do a consistent thing. Making it a circular nozzle is a big mistake as well. Because that's not how you want to cover a surface. You want to apply it the same way that you would clean it. Wanted to make it better, they'd have to nerf the regular gun. Yeah, pretty much. Well, they wouldn't have to. Like I say, if they made it, implemented it in that way, where you applied soap and then rinsed it off, it would make it less tedious. And also remove any limits on the amount of soap that you can buy. It's a case of, if you want to spend your money on soap, go for it. Like, I do not agree with the line of thinking of, oh, we're going to limit how much soap you can buy so that people don't accidentally buy too much soap and then not be able to afford the next washer without grinding, like redoing levels in free play to get additional income. It's like, well, people should think about how they're playing the game. That's how a game usually works. Make people think about what they're doing. You can't just accidentally buy soap. You've got to consciously go and use it. Current gun can remove almost everything with the yellow nozzle. Yeah. Except, no. Well, the Pro can, certainly. This can't. You know, this is Exhibit A of how you could make soap impactful. But yeah, the Pro washer completely negates the need for soap whatsoever. But that's your trade-off. You know, soap is the sort of thing you use early game to tide you over until you get a better washer. It's that simple. Once you have the Pro, you don't use soap. Yeah. If they wanted to make soap more impactful, they should have made it necessary. There should not be a limit on it. It should also just not cost anything as such, or it should cost such a minor amount. So you'd still have to be mindful of how efficient you use it, ideally. But it should last longer, be applied differently, and be required in some situations. Like to clean rust, for example, or oil. Cleaning oil especially, you should need soap to clean oil. It's that simple. Like, that should be a requirement. But it's not. I did it with this nozzle. That's fine. You know, that's how they've made the game. That's fine. But if they wanted soap to be in the game at all, it should be literally required to clean certain types of stains. No matter what nozzle you're using, no matter what washer you're using, you should just need to first apply soap to loosen up things like oil before you can do it. Yeah, they needed to take liberties, absolutely. I mean, there's that, or they could have had it as an option in the settings. You know, I am a strong believer in give the player more options to tailor the solution to themselves. I don't think it would have been impossible or even particularly difficult to code in a check that if an option in the settings was checked that said oil requires soap or soap is required for some stains, that when the player is in the game and dealing with those things, that it checks, oh, what are they using? Oh, do they have this option checked? Ooh, then they need to use soap. Could be done. Just saying. Could have been done. Give the player more options as a Linux user. I do not use Linux. I never. I installed it in an operating systems class. Linux is an example of giving the player too many mandatory options. You should have it preset, but you should have options to tailor your experience. It's like with Subnautica when they did their V2 and they changed the way that the crafting interface looked. It puts things out as a grid instead of it presenting as a line. They could have added a checkbox to the menu for a player to decide which method of crafting menu they wanted to use, and defaulted to grid style for consoles especially. That's the main reason they implemented it. But for PC, they could have had it that, oh, you can choose line. I'm not a fan of the approach for things that are cosmetic in a game, especially, but even, you know, actual real gameplay modifying things. I'm not a fan of developers taking too hard a line and deciding what their players have to do. I'm much more a proponent of, where possible, let the user choose how they want to play. And that, you know, modern games have been really good about doing that. There's been a lot of examples where there are different tweaks that you can use. You can customize your UI hugely to make the experience that you want for playing the game. It's certainly a lot better than it used to be. You know, 30, 40 years ago, you just didn't get options in games. It's like, here's the game, play it. We've come a long way, don't get me wrong. On the scale of options to no options, we've got Linux, Microsoft, and whatever the hell Apple has. Yeah, I've also never used iOS, really. Not for a long time. I'm sure it gives the user some options. Just, I don't know how many. I mean, I'm sure Linux is fine in terms of, yeah, you can almost certainly use one of the, because there's all sorts of different types of Linux installed, and they will have certain presets, or certain packages that just get installed alongside them. That's great. I mean, my main misgiving against Linux is just compatibility. Like, I like things to just work. There's so many games that just, I mean, it's better now, but historically, so many games just did not work on Linux. You needed to either set up a VM or just run Windows in order to make games work. And so, well, I know what I'm going to choose because I want to play games, so I'm going to use Windows because it's easier. It's just that simple. Does it suck that there's basically a monopoly on it? Yeah, but meh. Notice you can download macOS on non-Apple machines. Couldn't care less, personally. I mean, didn't Windows 11, haven't they made it more like macOS in terms of like the central taskbar and stuff? But the user has the option to put it back to how it was. So I know what I'm doing if I ever am forced to upgrade to Windows 11. It's the first thing I'll do. Same thing as I did with, had a laptop that had Windows 8.1 on it. And the start menu thing, or like the basic menu area, was the sort of tablet tiles and stuff. It looked like a kindergarten tablet interface. But you have the option to get rid of that and have a normal desktop environment. It's like, well, I'm going to make that my default, thanks. Back in the days, developers believed it was impossible to port a game to a Windows device. I wasn't aware that was even a perception at the time, quite frankly. I don't agree that that was a particular perception. But I also wasn't following things much back then. We had a computer that ran MS-DOS for a very long time, and then we had Windows 3.11. which was basically just a DOS veneer anyway. It wasn't its own thing. And then we skipped Windows 95 at home, and we didn't upgrade from 3.1 until we got 98 second edition. So yeah, I wouldn't have a clue about all of that stuff. I didn't believe it was possible to get a game to run on DOS. See, that's just manifestly untrue. And Doom wasn't the one to prove that. There was tons of games running on MS-DOS before Doom. Positive about that. Maybe something about the specific type of game, but there was a lot of games back in the heyday. But again, I don't know the full timeline because I didn't have to care. I was young. Before I was playing games like Doom, I was playing games like SimCity Classic on DOS and Commander Keen, the original Need for Speed. And I mean, yeah, I don't know the timeline of events because I have no idea when those games actually came out. But before then, we had an x86 machine that I think used an early version of DOS, and there was games like Breakout on that. So like where you have a paddle with a ball bouncing and you've got to break the blocks. Yeah, we had that on the old Nitram. As well as I think a few others, but I can't remember what they were because it's a very long time ago now. That was like an X086 machine or something. And then we got a 386 that my dad actually programmed his own menu for MS-DOS. So basically made his own operating system. Very basic, but pretty cool. I'm sure he was following some instructions to do so, but it was still pretty neat. And then, yeah, we got Windows 3.1. And played around with GW Basic. Had games like Lemmings. Cannon Fodder. It was like a old tactics shoot 'em up. That was fun, actually. And of course, the guerrilla game where you throw explosive bananas at each other across rooftops. Classics. Standards for games were very different back then. And here we are, power washing. The pinnacle of gaming. Hey, we're at 94%. I just realized we managed to tick up another singular percentage point. Yay. We've got a lot of this wall left. Gotta decide whether to take another break now or persevere. Oh god, there's so much left. Okay, I think we're probably going to have to take another break before finishing this wall because my wrist is not going to be happy with me otherwise. So that's fun. I mean, I did work out on the opposite side that it takes about 30 seconds to do each of these blocks, I think. So it's a minute every 2 blocks. And there's like 30 or more blocks on each row. So doing 2 rows takes half an hour. We've had a lot of rows to get through. So yeah, it doesn't really surprise me that this has taken a lot longer than I thought. That means that just doing the next 2 rows plus the... Actually, there's less on the gold bit than I thought, so that's not so bad. But doing the rest of this wall alone might take an hour in itself. Been Googling, the reason most people devs had issues porting to games to PC is the majority of devs are focused on consoles. Yeah, funny that. Porting game from console to also was difficult. Yeah, it just wasn't considered worthwhile. It was like, oh, are these personal computer things really going to take off? You know, everyone has games consoles. We've got SNES and we've got Ataris and all of that sort of stuff. Sega Master Systems and things. It's like, if people want games, they have a games console with cartridges. You know, who's going to want to use a personal computer just to run games? So yeah, it was a perception of market thing more than anything else. It was a case of having to focus, like shift focus and dedicate time and resources onto an emerging market that it wasn't considered worthwhile doing. Until you had developers who started up, like not coming from consoles, starting up development purely for PC. And as soon as that started happening, it's like, oh, okay, people are interested in this. And then the floodgates opened. That makes sense to me. Like, there would have been very niche things, like very basic things. But yeah, it's a case of, it took something like Doom, I imagine, does make sense. It would take something like that, where it's a development house that has dedicated themselves, okay, we're actually going to make this for PC, and show that, yeah, there is a market for this. Because the thing, we had a Sega console of sorts, but I can't remember when we got that. I feel we might have picked that up second-hand after we'd already had a PC for a while. Because I do remember playing some stuff on a Sega on the TV, but it was around the same time as we were playing stuff on Dad's computer as well. Okay, well, 94%. We've got the rest of this wall still to go, and that's going to take a while, and then we can get started on the front. But we need to take another little break, have a drink, have a stretch. Genesis? No, this was before the Genesis. This was an old Sega Master System of some sort. I think it was a Sega. I don't even know. It might have been something else for all I know. It was old. It had a racing game, it had a tennis game. Yeah, it definitely wasn't. I mean, when was the Genesis? Wasn't that in the 90s or something? This was older than that. Definitely. First people to make console emulators were devs. Absolutely. Yeah, write code to make an emulator. Precisely. You start small, and then you work big. Cool, well, I'm going to take another break. I suggest you do the same. We'll be back shortly.